you very much. I'm thankful for this group, actually Dr. Lalit and Dr. Group for giving this opportunity to present my findings in this conference. And also, I very thankful. I like to see our school children here, so this is very important to them also. And actually, this is somewhat different title before session, and I think yesterday's sessions, most of the presenters did presentations on especially about the conservation of different animal, flora, fauna species. But today my presentation is basically on plants and botanical illustrations. And actually the botanical illustrations and botanical artists played a very good role to conserve plant diversity of Sri Lanka, and also during the identification of plants in very early stages, maybe 17th century and 18th century, the artists and as well as scientists, this botanical illustrations were used as one of the major tools for their purpose, And here I am to present you about the history of botanical illustrations in Sri Lanka. And first of all, I am going to introduce about botanical illustrations. What is the botanical illustration and who is the illustrator? Actually, a botanical illustration is a kind of technique used to explain morphological characteristics of a plant, which is useful during identification and record keeping. Because during, as I mentioned just before, during very early stages of the plant identification, this was the major tool. And botanical illustrator is an artist, but he is very good artist. He is able to translate plant science into a beautiful art. The botanical drawing were useful technique during the early days of discovery of diversity in the plant world. And the activity or the action of the illustrator, botanical illustrator, is to depict accurate illustration of plants and their traits for scientific purposes. The accuracy of the illustration is the expectation of an illustration rather than its artistic value. However, the combination of science and art make a wonderful botanical illustration. So under the illustration, in the illustration, what we can see, a combination of science and art. So artists can't do this, but scientists also can't do this. The scientist and artist should be combined together to produce a very nice botanical illustration. In my next slide, I'm going to show you some of the illustrations. This illustration actually a kind of black and white pen and drawing illustration. And this is, we can say as a color paintings, and this is a paint created by William Dallis, a Sri Lankan botanical artist. And this is another color painting completed by actually an illustrator called Joseph Pierre, a French botanist. And here you can see another botanical illustration. It is somewhat very complex. So these are the expectations in very complex illustrations. The illustrator should show all the morphological features like floral characteristics, stamen, and also ovaries, ovule arrangements, because all those features are very important during the identification of plants. And here also I have another example which is showing some scenic figures, but these are also very important because, you know, during maybe ecological studies or some other studies, we need to create the profile diagrams of the forest, like the habitat characteristics of the plants within the forest. So in this scenario, this kind of illustration is also very important. Then let's see what are the applications of the botanical illustration. First, as always I am saying, during the identification, we need this type of illustration, and also to record morphological features. Right. So another thing, if the plant species has already been extended from the habitat, but the illustration is here, so we have a very good record to show that one was here in our habitats. Like during the preservation and the species conservation, we can use it. And in addition to that, in display boards for as a hobby, also we can do this. And classroom activities, especially in schools as well as in universities, they are applying this. And for a publication, books as well as research papers, mostly, when we are discovered a new plant species, not only plant but also animal species, we need to make a, in addition to the photographs, in scientists or discovered people, they are using very nice, accurate diagrams together with the photographs. This is so that this is also very important. In addition to that, during the awareness programs also, and also the other one is a kind of stamps. They are also the animals, but they are scientific illustrations. Then I'll going to explain you the objective. Actually, this is a kind of study that I have conducted during very recent past. So my major objective was to find the information on the history and evolution of botanical illustration of Sri Lanka, because what I felt, the botanical illustrative works are very important. Actually, I am illustrator, I am doing it, so that I wanted to find out the history of it. But when I did it, actually, you all know during past 2 years, we had several problems in our country because of the corona pandemic. So I also wanted to do something during the lockdown period. So I selected this title to see, search information about the history and some developmental or evaluations of the botanical illustrative works of Sri Lanka. So we all were inside our houses, but we have some facilities, internet and some other things. So I did the online survey to find out the history behind the botanical illustrative works of Sri Lanka. The study was conducted during lockdown period because of the corona pandemic of the country in 2020 and 2021. However, this is not a completely finished study. Still, I am continuing with the study. And online sources were referred to collect the data on botanical illustrative works, evaluation of illustrative work with the time. And most of the online materials were referred. And you all know most of the books related to plants diversity in Sri Lanka published during the colonial period, their digitized forms are available in online. So they can freely download it. So a lot of sources are there. In addition to that, there are a lot of uploaded botanical illustrations that created by Sri Lankan artists and also some foreign artists based on our local flora available in online sources like maybe Kew Botanical Garden, the Herbarium and Calcutta Herbarium. They are available in downloadable forms. So freely we can use them. So I was able to access those botanical herbarium resources, and also I get the information. And also there are some online research papers which we can download it about the natural history works of Sri Lanka, maybe in some other countries too. I downloaded such papers and also referred. And some of the information I gathered from the social media like Facebook. Especially, I think some of you know the Haramanis Dalvis. So his information, most of his information are available in the Facebook, and I gathered information and later on I verified the information by doing some personal contacts with the people. And finally, all the data gathered were referred and summarized and analyzed to find out the history and evaluation of botanical illustrations in Sri Lanka. And then I'll move into the next part of my presentation, results and discussion. So under results and discussion, actually the historical period I classified into several time periods. And actually very early stages of the botanical works of Sri Lanka, most foreign scientists deal with it. They were the pioneers at the very early stages. And so that the first title under the results and discussion is botanical drawing done by foreign illustrated scientists. First scientist I met through my study was the Paul Herman. He was the first historical record of the Sri Lankan botanical illustrative works run back to 17th century. And Paul Herman lived in 1646 to 1695, was a German-born Dutch botanist and the first European botanist to make collection of plants from Sri Lanka. Right? And the illustrative works of Paul Herman were published in book called Museum Selenicum by Sherrod, but unfortunately I was not able to search this document yet. However, Paul Herman is the father of botany of Sri Lanka. We can appreciate him, we can say him as a father of botany of Sri Lanka because in this very past stages of time, he did a lot of work to identify and to make records of the Sri Lankan flora. And Herman's specimen and drawing collections are deposited in Paul Herman's Ceylon Herbarium in Leiden, the Netherlands. So they have the resources, but in our country we don't have this valuable information. But in the Netherlands, in the Herman's Ceylon Herbarium, all his collections and all his drawings which are based on Sri Lankan flora are available. Then I found another historical point about the botanical drawings. The Leiden University Library, the Netherlands holds another evidence on the botanical drawings of Sri Lanka flora. Leiden University Library holds 2 pieces of codex entitled Icon Plantarum Malabaricum. So this is a kind of manuscript. It is available in online version. Digital forms it is available. So in this manuscript contains 262 watercolor drawings of medicinal plants from Sri Lanka. But the artist or the scientist who did this work is anonymous. And but I was, fortunately, I downloaded this particular manuscript, and in this slide you can see 2 diagrams, botanical paintings did at that time on the 2 plants, Hemidesmus indicus and Tinospora sinensis. All those 2 species are medicinal. Actually, in this Icons Plantarum Malabaricum, it contains paintings of the 262 medicinal plants of Sri Lanka and some descriptions also available for each and every drawings. After replacing the Dutch from the British during the middle of the 18th century, they established the first botanical garden of Sri Lanka in Kalutara. So this is also a remarkable stage. So since it has created botanical garden, and the most of the foreign scientists appointed there as a superintendents and some other posts. So since Sri Lanka have very high biodiversity and plant diversity, mostly they felt love in the Sri Lankan flora and they wanted to study and they wanted to identify them. So that these foreign scientists did a very good service. Actually, during after created this Kalutara Botanical Garden, so 2 botanists visited Sri Lanka, Anna Maria Walker and Florence George Walker in 1830 and 1838 period. They were here and they were botanists as well as botanical illustrators. So they collected actually orchid species from the Adams Peak and they painted all the orchid species that they have collected. However, their paintings are also deposited in the Kew Herbarium and we can't really access there, but under permission, I think we can take some information about their drawings from the Kew Herbarium. Then I move into another event, Dr. G.H.K. Thwaites. Thwaites was again British scientist, botanist, worked as a superintendent in Royal Botanic Gardens, Peradeniya for 31 years of the period. And Thwaites, 1864, published the first systematic catalogue of the flora of Ceylon. This is the first systematic catalogue. First book, first documentation systematically produced about the Sri Lankan flora in 1864, Enumeratio Plantarum Seleniae, by describing the plant species, but Enumeratio Plantarum Seleniae does not contain any botanical drawings. But the Dr. Thwaites recorded as a botanical illustrator. Dr. Thwaites was published in Hooker's Journal of Botany. In his illustrations were published in Hooker's Journal of Botany. In that article, 9 colored illustrations were found for, 9 uncolored illustrations were found for G.H. Thwaites' side. And here in this slide, you is able to see his illustrations. Actually, whether he is recorded as a botanical illustrator, but all his illustrators are combined work with the Haramanis Tallis. The signatures of the both persons are appearing in all of these illustrations. Then I'll move into another historical aspect of the botanical illustration, the Alvis and his family as pioneers in plant illustration. So throughout my online survey I also can say the Haramanis Alvis and his family as a pioneers in plant illustrations in Sri Lanka. However, Tetiagon in 2009, his natural history article, he also introduced this family as a pioneers in plant illustrations in Sri Lanka because most of the family members, the Haramanis, the Alvis family members did botanical illustrations and did very good service to illustrate Sri Lankan flora, especially traveling plants, Getson traveling plants. First, I will explain you, give information about the Haramanis Alvis. The first Sri Lankan botanical illustrator recorded in history is the Haramanis Alvis. He is the first recorded Sri Lankan illustrator, but the previous illustrators, everyone that I explained, they were foreign illustrators. Haramanis Alvis, he was very fortunate person. He was employed as botanical artist at the Palutara Botanic Garden as well as in later Peradeniya Botanic Garden. And during Haramanis period, he was able to complete paintings more than 2,000 Sri Lankan plant species, flowering plant species. And also, in addition to the illustrative work, his another duty was to visit Betson Forest of Sri Lanka and collect plant specimens for identification and preservation purposes, so that the most of his drawings are focused to the lowland rainforest plants, like Dipterocarpus, Stemenophorus-like species he illustrated. And also mostly he did watercolor paintings, but occasionally he did line drawings together with Dr. D.H.K. Place. And in this slide, you can see one of the illustration of Haramanis Alvis on Dipterocarpus serenicus. In here, it is a color painting, and you can see all the morphological features like the arrangement, venation, and the margin patterns, inflorescences, the colorations of the inflorescence, and cut sections, maybe longitudinal or cross sections of the flowers, ovaries, stamens, everything he illustrated. But he is just a person, but by looking at these illustrations, we can assume the knowledge that he had about the systematics, plant systematic. But they haven't studied, but during their observation, because of they did very deep observation about the morphological features, they were able to illustrate this type of illustrations. So still we can use, and also another aspect is their drawings they are using the natural colors. That means the Dipterocarpus is the color of the Dipterocarpus is similar as the diagram. So natural, they were very keen to select natural colorations to paint their paintings, the leaf colors, flower colors, everything. Right? Like the natural colors are here. And then William Dalvis, one of the sons of the Haramanis Dalvis, he made the paintings of more than 100 fungi species in Sri Lanka. Actually, it also for the focus in identification of fungi species, he did it. In addition to that, he was very famous about the butterfly drawings. And in this slide, you can see drawings of the William Dalvis. First one is Vomia triquetra, and the second one is some of the mushroom species he deal with. Here another illustrator, George Dalvis, another son of the Haramanis Dalvis. He also did paintings of the flowering plants. One example is given here. Then another event, the Twyman is another British scientist who worked as a superintendent of the Royal Botanic Garden of Peradeniya. And during his period, this Haramanis family was the illustrators of the Botanical Garden of the Peradeniya, as well as sometimes the Botanical Gardens of the Calcutta. So the illustration collection of the Haramanis family used this Twyman in 1892 for the published the book called Dates in Illustration of a Handbook to the Flora of Ceylon. The digital form of this book also available as online, so anyone interested, you can download and go through. And in there, all the illustrations did by Haramanis Dalvis, his sons William and George are available. And there are some examples. Some of the illustrations are collective work of three of the persons, the father and two sons. Collectively, they completed the illustrations. And another thing, the collection of family work and copies of them deposited in National Herbarium Peradeniya, National Museum of Sri Lanka, Colombo, the Department of Agriculture, Rannuru, Queen's Cottage, Morelia, Natural History Museum, London, Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, the Singapore Botanic Garden, and the Calcutta Botanic Garden. So all their illustrations and copies of them are deposited in these places, right? And it is about the time period before the 19th century, and after the 19th century also there are some illustrative works we can see in our history, but they are not, that means it is not very abundant like previous years. Actually, after the 19th century, the Mary Evans, another botanical artist, did a poster on parasitic plants in Sri Lankan jungle. But the details about the Mary Evans I haven't found through any sources. But in the right side of this slide, you can see the poster did by Mary Evans. In there, you can see the Adams peaks and also most of the orchid species like Rhincostylis as well as Phaeus crampaviliae, like orchids are illustrated by Mary Evans in her poster. And another event, I think most of you know about the Candy Flora by A.H.D. Alston in 1938. It basically in this Candy Flora, the Alston explained the flowering plant species which can found around the candy. And in there we can see black and white line drawings, and the most of the drawings in this Candy Flora did by A.G. Dallis. He is one of the grandsons of the Haramanis Dallis. Then another book, Classes of Sri Lanka by J.E. Senaratne in 1956. In this book, 350 glass drawings. The color paintings are available, and all the drawings were created by A.G. Dallis, the grandson of the Haramanis Dallis. Then Wildflowers of the Ceylon Hill is another book did by Thomas E.D. Bond in 1953. In there, he focused about the wildflower species in Sri Lankan hills, especially Nuttall's region and also Horton Plains National Park like area. And in his book also, there are a lot of color paintings are available, but they are not very complex or complete like early illustrations that created by Haramanis Dallis and his family. But some of the illustrations are available. Unfortunately, the illustrator is anonymous. There are no evidence about the illustrator of this book. And then we are meeting another very nice book, Wildflowers of Ceylon by Dorothy Fernando, published in 1954. In this book also, she actually here illustrated also the Dorothy Fernando as a hobby from her childhood to her, during her life period, he did the illustrations. So after that, she has a very good collection. Finally, she was able to publish her illustrations as a book named as Wildflowers of Ceylon. Right? The illustrator also the Dorothy Fernando. Then I move into another historical and remarkable event of Sri Lanka about the floral species, a revised handbook to the flora of Ceylon. It is a granted project, and under this project, all the flowering plants were described. And the output of these descriptions are published as the series of book volumes, 14 volumes. And I went through all these books because these flora of Ceylon are digitally available. We can access the digitized forms are available. We can access. So I was able to gather all the information about the botanical illustrative works present in flora of Ceylon of Sri Lanka. And in this table, you can see in each volume in the first column and the different plant families described in the second column and the number of illustrations available under each and every families are given. And they are also actually, I haven't found the details about illustrators, but they are signatures. In some cases, their signatures are available in near the illustrations. So then I searched through their signatures and try to find the names of the illustrators. In this activity, I found that some of the illustrations, especially the 169 illustrations created under the family Orchidaceae are done by Mr. B.G. Surya, and there are some illustrators like Malini Gunatilaka and also Ray Wilson, like foreign illustrators, were contributed to illustrate the particular illustrations present in Flora of Ceylon. The other volumes of the Flora of Ceylon also, some of the illustrations are available, created by sometimes foreign illustrators, sometimes local illustrators like A.R. Kancharani and Ted Slide. But in the Flora of Ceylon also, I haven't found the appreciation of these illustrators in the series of books. But the appreciation may be in the somewhere, but in the books I haven't found. But and here in this slide, you can see two of the orchid illustrations available in the Flora of Ceylon Volume 2 and done by Mr. Premasuri. And then I move into the medicinal plants used in Ceylon. It is also a 5-volume book series by D.M.A. Jayveer, and he was also a person worked as superintendent of the Royal Botanic Garden of Peradeniya. And however, all illustrations that appeared in medicinal plants, indigenous and exotic in Ceylon are completed by D.G. Premasuri. And this series of volumes, D.M.A. Jayasuri appreciated the D.G. Premasuri for his illustrative works. And when consider the medicinal plants used in Ceylon in series of books, they have described 650 species, and there are 592 illustrations are present for each species. So they paid more attention to illustrate plants together with the descriptions. But when we come into the Flora of Ceylon, you know the flowering plant diversity already that means identified many species, and in Sri Lanka it is more than 300 flowering plant species are present, native as well as introduced. But in the Flora of Ceylon series, they have paid attention to illustrate only 360 species, but the medicinal plant, they illustrated much than the Flora of Ceylon. And in this slide, you can see two diagrams present in the medicinal plants of Sri Lanka. In there, some black and white as well as color illustrations are present. And now I move into the recent years, later period of the 20th century. However, you know, because of the discovery of the cameras and for easy processing and for some, and also because of some other aspects, after the 20th century, the work, the botanical illustrative work declined. However, when we consider some few books like Floral Structures of some Selected Tropical Plants by Balasubramaniam in 1984, and also a Nature Guide to the Flowers and Trail Horton Base by Gunathilaka 1996, a Field Guide to the Common Trees and Shrubs of Sri Lanka by Ashton in 1997. In those books, some few illustrations are available. And another remarkable event in the history was Profile Reduce project, which was conducted mainly in the National Herbarium of Sri Lanka. Under this project, it has paid more attention to illustrate the profile reduce of Sri Lanka. And the project was happened around 2006 or 2007, and actually the illustrators they are able to illustrate more than 500 Sri Lankan floral species. Actually, I was also a member of this project as an illustrator. I worked there at that time. And here I am showing you some of the illustrations completed by myself, because some of the digitized illustrations are available with me, but other illustrators, their works are not available with me. And also this illustrations still haven't published, but I use these illustrations in my presentation because I am the person who did this. That's why I use it. Then I will move into the discussion of this presentation. Mostly scientists and illustrators paid their attention to the flowering plants because the flowering plants had not been identified at that time scientifically and successfully. That's why it has been initiated to did the botanical illustration for the flowering plants during the maybe Dutch period and British period. And during the period of Dutch and British colonies, many foreign scientists fell love on the local flora and started to identify and document local plants. The advanced techniques that they used was the drawing of plants, because the sending of collection of drawings to the herbaria in foreign countries are easier than the sending of live or dried specimen. And also, if we have dried a specimen, their features are changing. But in a botanical drawing, features are not changing. So continuously for a longer time of period, repeatedly we can use it. And the qualities of the drawings are very high in 18th century, but recently their qualities are very less. And recently we can see mostly the black and white drawings, but not the paintings. And Haramanis Dallis, William Dallis, George Dallis were the pioneers of illustrators at that time. And I am telling the period in which they have the art can be introduced as the golden era of botanical illustrations in Sri Lanka. It is my thing. And after their period, the quality as well as the usage of the botanical illustrations declined. The reasons could be a limitation. The remaining number of covering terms for identification is very less. Another thing is the development of camera and some softwares so easily because to do the botanical illustration is time consuming. As an example, to complete the color paintings like with almost all characteristic features, it may take maybe 15 days or 1 month. But the photography, just within 1 day, we can finish it. So the time may be the problem there. And also the reason could be the limitation of the usage of drawings in publication. Now we can't see in almost all drawing books, the recent books, nature books, everything, we can see photographs rather than the botanical illustrations. And non-coexistence of coloring transfer for the identification also may be a reason for the limitation. But we can pay attention about the other plant lineages, primitive lineages like maybe ferns or mosses. They are very diverse and still we haven't identified almost all species in our habitats. Another reason may be the underestimation of the painters is also another reason for the limitation. The enormous service done by Haramanis and family of Sri Lankan flora has not been well recognized by Sri Lankan, but they were well honored by the British. Haramanis had named after him by John Linley a species of D+ orchid, Taeniophyllum alvisi, endemic to Sri Lanka. And in honor of his work on fungi, William had named after him genus of slime mold Alvisia. Right? And lastly, the botanical artist held an employment position in botanical garden of Peradeniya, Department of Agriculture in early period, but recently it is not a kind of position in our Sri Lankan organizations. The Haramanis Dallis, William Dallis, George Dallis, A.G. Dallis, and B.G. Pemasori worked as roadmans in that particular places, but currently this post is not existing. Because of this, there are no any responsible persons to illustrate local flora. However, there are several talented people are located in several places of Sri Lanka as a hobby they are doing. For their own works, they are illustrating, and for their publications, they are illustrating, and also there are some illustrators, they are participating to international competitions and everything, but other Sri Lankans or scientists don't know about them. And but when we consider the foreign countries, maybe India, United Kingdom, Australia, America, in all those places, in their herbariums, in their botanical gardens, there are well-renowned, popular botanical artists are working. And since they are working every day, their activities, their qualities are very high. But in Sri Lanka, we are not paying attention for this area, so that we can't see very talented, very good artists in Sri Lanka. But in several places, in a scattered basis, they are here, right? And in conclusion, the botanical artists find new insights for science through practice of illustration. The literature suggested that some botanical artists throughout history have played an important role in the discovery and description of plant diversity. The illustrative works are currently limited, and the conclusion I can expand it by recommending to illustrate remaining flowering plants and other primitive plant lineages native to Sri Lanka And most of the botanists and botanical scientists should pay attention for this, and all the other organizations related to Sri Lankan botany, maybe Royal Botanic Gardens of Peradeniya, and all the other botanical gardens. Here in Sri Lanka, there are a lot of botanical gardens now. So all workers there have to be paid attention for this, because this is a valuable area of the science. They have to focus, and this is very historical aspects of the flora of our country. So Haramanis Dalvis and previous scientists, they completed most of the flowering plant species from, but the remaining amount is very big. If we consider fern species, the gymnosperms in Sri Lanka, there are very few species, but mosses and fungus species like freshwater algae, the numbers are very high. So most of them we haven't identified yet them into their species level. So we have a very big project to do in near future. If all are agree, we have to do the illustrative works, and we can complete the morphological descriptions of almost all plants in Sri Lanka as a diagrams. So it is my final conclusion and the recommendation. And these are some of the references. In addition to these books, I went through several websites, but I haven't pasted web addresses here. So this is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for your kind cooperation. Thank you.